and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very, very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing absolutely fine. I welcome you all to this weekly webinar. In this webinar today, we have for you some of the most important news stories specifically from GS3 paper of UPSC mains examination. Today, we'll be discussing some important news stories, especially from science and technology and from environment. I hope all of you are well, and I hope all of your preparation is going right on track. Good evening, everyone. Those who have just joined in, good evening, good evening, good evening. Let's wait for just a couple of minutes. Let us also wait for others to join in. Once we have all the people on board, we'll begin the class quickly. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Also, I hope all of you are aware that close to 6 months now remain between today and the prelims examination that you have. Do remember these 6 months, the upcoming 6 months can be the make or break time period for you. So make sure that you do utilize these upcoming 6 months in as much efficiency as possible. Make sure you focus specifically on the prelims subjects. Make sure that you focus a lot on test series. Make sure that you give as many tests as possible. Read the explanation of each and every question and make sure that you are on the right track. The next 6 months can be very, very, very important. So just reminding you, you can set your clock, you can see the countdown now beginning. All your hard work of last 1 year, or in some cases, even more than 1 year. All your hard work has now come down to this. The next 6 months, please, please, please don't be complacent. Please put in all the best efforts that you can. Perfect. Perfect. Chalo. A lot of people have joined in. Once again, a very, very warm welcome to everyone. Good evening once again. As you know, we have assembled here specifically to talk about some of the most important news stories that have been in the news, especially with respect to GS3 paper. In that, we'll be focusing on environment and ecology and science and technology. These are the things that we will be discussing. As you know, Byju's Exam Prep IAS is running its All India National Prelims 2023 test series. I hope all of you are a part of it. The first couple of tests have already gone. I'm sure all of you will benefit a lot. Make sure that you give as many tests as possible right on time. The tests do happen on Sundays. As you know, these are online and offline options available for the test. There are a lot of you who might have this kind of a thinking in their mind that I will not give the test today. Let me give the test next week. Let me give the test later when I'm more prepared. If you're in that category, my advice is please give the test on the very day when the test is supposed to happen. Even if you have not completed the syllabus, don't worry. Test yourself on that day. You can later on again give the test. But once you delay it, it will keep on getting delayed. Make sure that you do give the test on that day itself, because even if you don't score a lot of marks, you don't have to worry about that. Even if you're not being able to get a lot of marks in the test, please don't be discouraged. There are still 6 months remaining for all of you to work extremely hard. The marks that you are getting are just for you. It is just for yourself. No one is interested in your marks. So don't think that what if I get lower marks, what will people think of me? No one will think anything. Please focus on as many tests as possible. Perfect. So these are the topics that we have for you lined up. So we will be talking about greenwashing as a concept. What exactly is this? Why is it in the news? Why is it being discussed? Then we'll focus on Tibetan antelope. We'll be discussing why exactly is this species in the news? Why is it that we are now discussing about it? What is its connection with the current affairs? Then we'll be discussing about the Polavaram Dam, a dam that has been in the news for many, many years now. Then Loft ID mission of NASA. What is this mission all about? How is it important? Why exactly would this be important for us in the syllabus also and in real life also? The fifth topic that we'll be discussing is India's net zero plan documented COP27. This is probably the topic on which we'll be spending most of our time today. We will be going in detail, deep analysis of the COP27 and specifically what is it that India is planning to do to achieve our net zero target. As you know, the Union Environment Minister unveiled a few days back India's net zero plan document. We'll be discussing what exactly is that. All of that will be done in the class today. So let's not delay any further. A lot of you have joined in on time. So let's begin with the very first topic, that is called greenwashing. Now, what exactly is greenwashing? Now, This term actually is very similar to some other terms that you might be using. For example, you all might have heard about some other term which is called evergreening. Remember, evergreening also is a word which is very, very different. It is not the same. Evergreening is very different and greenwashing is different. Let's try and understand what is greenwashing. Now, greenwashing is specifically related to climate change and the efforts that the nations are making, or efforts that the individual companies are making to stop climate change. Greenwashing means a practice wherein nations around the world or private companies actually project that they are doing a lot of things to stop climate change, they are doing a lot of things to help the environment, while in reality, most of it is lie. This is called greenwashing. Let me explain again. Greenwashing means when you actually try and project your efforts towards climate change in a much, much bigger manner as compared to what they really are. So, for example, if a country, let's take an example, if a country cuts down its greenhouse gas emission by 5%, but they go around the world on international platforms, keep telling everyone that we have cut down our emissions by 25%, which is a lie. This is called greenwashing. This is called as a practice of greenwashing, where you illegally actually present a false report of your efforts made towards climate change. Now, the problem here is when a country says that we have cut down our emissions by this much or we have cut down our pollution by this much, it is very difficult to verify those claims. It's very, very difficult. Usually, whenever the government says that we have cut down our emissions by this much, other nations have no option but to believe it. Other nations say, okay, if you have cut down the emissions by this much, you must not be lying. But what has been seen recently is many nations have actually been giving a false picture of what they are doing. This is why the problem of greenwashing has come into the picture. Now, in the first slide, I also told you this is similar to some other word which is called evergreening. Evergreening is very, very different. Please don't be confused with this. Evergreening is related to patents. Evergreening is related to patents. So basically what evergreening is, let me also tell you that. Evergreening means, let's assume I have a patent on a medicine. Let's say I invented a very successful medicine that can cure cancer. And in that medicine, because I am the only one who has made it, I get a patent so that no one else can make it. Now, patent is given for 20 years only. In those 20 years, no one can copy it. Now, what happens when the 20 years are about to end? I make a very small change in my medicine, change the color, change the composition by just 0.1%, and then I claim this is a new medicine. Give me the patent again. That practice is called evergreening of patents. That is very different. Evergreening means when you are making very small, very minute, negligible changes in your experiment or whatever you have developed, and you claim that you want the patent again. That is different. We are here discussing specifically about greenwashing, which, as I said, is a practice where the countries and the companies claim to have made a much higher impact than what they actually have. Now, this is with relation to the COP27. As you know, the COP27 is happening in Egypt, where the nations around the world are coming together to discuss how exactly are they planning to combat climate change. This is where the UN has raised concerns that many nations are actually giving a false report of their emissions. This is what greenwashing is. Greenwashing is not a new term. Please remember, greenwashing is not a new term. Greenwashing is a term that came up in 1986. In 1986, there was an American environmentalist and researcher, Jay Westerveld, who said that we cannot trust what the companies or the nations claim. We cannot trust when they say that we have cut down our emissions by this much or this is what we have achieved in the environment, because many of them may actually be lying. This is a practice of greenwashing. As I said, greenwashing is a practice when they make false claims to avoid any fines to build a better image. And many companies have actually been doing this. For example, around the world, companies such as Coca Cola, Shell, BP is British Petroleum, Shell is again a very, very big company that actually has petrol pumps, that sells oil, refined oil. All these companies have been accused in the past of doing this. That is, they say that we are doing so many changes or we are doing a lot of efforts for the environment, when in reality that is not true. As I told in the beginning, the biggest problem with greenwashing is when a country makes a claim that we have made so much contribution to environment, we have cut down our emissions by this much percent. It is extremely, extremely difficult to verify and monitor them. In most cases, when the countries say that they have made such changes or they have cut down the emissions, you have no option but to trust them. You trust them, okay, they would be saying they would be saying truth, they would not be lying. But in reality, that is not the case. In fact, multiple organizations have said that we will do this, we will monitor it for you, and you give us a fee. But in reality, no one can actually monitor it. For example, take a country such as India. Just try and understand this from the side of the government. Let's assume the government of India says that we will calculate and we will measure all the greenhouse gas emissions in India. But do you think it is possible? Not really. Yes, maybe the big companies, the big organizations, they may get their report to the government. Like the big companies such as Reliance, Tata, Bajaj, these companies might prepare a report and give a report to the government. But do you think the government would really actually be able to calculate all the small organizations, the bits and pieces, the small factories which are spread all across the country, how much emission they are making, what is their contribution to the environment pollution? No, it is just not possible. And this is why it is very, very difficult for you to actually monitor and verify if the countries are lying or not. Now, related to it is a concept of carbon credit. Please try and understand what is carbon credit and how is it related to it. The first question is, what if a country is lying? Let's assume that a country, let's say China is lying. China is saying that we have actually made a lot of difference. We have cut down our emissions. We have planted so many trees. That is also a lie. Any nation can say we have planted 10 crore trees, 20 crore trees. Who is going there to count? Since you can't really go there and count, whatever the government usually says, you have to believe. Now, this is where the problem starts, because this is related to something called carbon credit. Try and understand what is carbon credit. So what happens is, because the nations around the world have accepted the fact that we should cut down on our emissions, what happened was, in the Kyoto meeting, Kyoto Protocol, that is famously called Kyoto Protocol 1997, it was decided, listen to this, it was decided that nations around the world, developed nations, developing nations, will get certain carbon credit. Now, what is carbon credit? Carbon credit means how much emission can you actually make? Legally, how much pollution, how much greenhouse gas emission are you allowed to make? One carbon credit is equal to 1 metric tons of CO2. Please remember, 1 metric ton of CO2 is equal to 1 carbon credit. Those who are saying what is Kyoto Protocol, just like today, we have the ongoing meeting in Egypt, the COP27 meeting that is going on. Similarly, in 1997, the meeting was held in a place called Kyoto in Japan. So in Japan's Kyoto, when this meeting was held in 1997, countries around the world decided that we actually have to limit how much greenhouse gas emissions can be made. Now, please try and understand this. How did carbon credit work? Let's take a very simple example. Let's assume there's a country called Canada and there's a country called India. Okay. Now, Canada was given carbon credit of about, let's say, 500. India was given carbon credit, let's assume 300, meaning that Canada was told you can have greenhouse gas emission. How much? 500 metric ton of CO2 you are allowed, because one carbon credit is equal to 1 metric ton of CO2. India was told how much emission can you make? You can make 300 metric ton of CO2 emission, that will be allowed. Now, this is for 1 year. Now, what happens is, let's assume when Canada starts to work, Canada realizes that they are emitting more greenhouse gases. Canada starts to realize that they have completed this 500 metric ton and they want more carbon credit. Let's say their pollution is going above that. Now, what will they do? The one option that the nations have is they can buy carbon credits from some other nations. So they will call India, they will ask India, are you using these 300 carbon credits or not? India will say, no, I will only use 250. So 50 are still remaining. Canada says, okay, I will give you money, transfer these 50 carbon credits to me so that I can have a pollution of 550 metric tons of CO2. This is how carbon credits work, where one nation, usually industrialized nation, thinks that their pollution level is going above the limit of carbon credits that are given to them. They can buy carbon credits from other nations which have not utilized those carbon credits. Now, how will this actually help? This will help in giving money to developing nations. So developing nations, if they don't use their carbon credits, they will get the money from developed nations. And developed nations will be told that if you have to make more pollution, then you will have to pay more money, so that they can curtail their pollution by themselves. This is called carbon credit, trading of carbon certificates basically. Now, what is the connection of greenwashing with carbon credits? The connection is simple. Countries can also have more carbon credits. They can earn carbon credits by planting trees, by taking up activities which are helpful for the environment. So if Canada, as I said, if Canada wants 50 more carbon credits, they have two options. One option, they can buy it from other countries. Now, there is no fixed price for this. It is like buying gold. Wherever you get the cheapest, you go and buy it from there. So it's like a traded thing in the market. Wherever you buy the cheapest, you buy it from there. So one option is you buy it from other nations. The other option is, let's say you don't want to buy. Then what Canada can do is they can actually undertake some activities that will help the environment, like planting of trees, cutting down their greenhouse gas emissions, or recycling a lot of waste, giving a push to solar energy. If Canada does these kind of things, then also they can earn carbon credit. This is where greenwashing happens. Countries claim, see, we have planted 10 crore trees, 20 crore trees, meaning that we have earned more carbon credits. But in reality, they are actually lying. They might not have done this activity. This is where the problem actually starts. This is where the problem starts, because when you say that you actually have a lot of carbon credit, this is where the problem starts, because this is where you are lying. Now, as I said, carbon credits are directly impacted with greenwashing. Number one, they are available in all kinds of activities. Let's say you are growing trees, you can earn carbon credit. Planting certain kind of crop, you can again earn carbon credit. If you have energy efficient equipment in your offices, there are many offices that are built these days which are energy efficient. They don't consume a lot of energy, they don't emit a lot of CO2. When you take up these activities, that is how you can earn carbon credit. This is where the problem starts. Countries such as India, Brazil, we have accumulated a lot of carbon credits. So carbon credits that were given to us, we have not utilized them because our emissions were not that high. We still have a lot of those carbon credits. When we want to sell them to other countries, they say, no, no, we don't want these. We will plant trees. But in reality, they are not doing that. So greenwashing, that is lying, not fulfilling the promises that they have made, is having a direct impact on the carbon credit market as well. You can expect usually straightforward questions from these kind of topics. An example of question can be, what is greenwashing? How does it impact the global fight against the climate change? Let me quickly take up a few questions that have been asked in this particular topic. There's a question, so this carbon credit is in which form? So carbon credit is nothing but a kind of a paper document. A document which says that you are allowed to have this much pollution. If you go above that limit, then you have to buy that kind of a document from some other country. So basically, it's kind of electoral bonds only. If I ask you electoral bonds, in what form they are? They are just in paper form, which says that you have this right to actually emit this much pollution. This is it. So carbon credit is not something that you can actually will actually store in your briefcase. It's just a right or permission given to a country that you are allowed to have this much pollution. This right or this permission, you can actually go give it to some other country. One other question that I have is, we know which country has how much carbon credit. Yes, as per the Kyoto Protocol, the countries developing in developed countries are given a quota of carbon credit. So you can check that online. Then I have a question: is exchanging of carbon credit allowed? It is allowed, but why would you exchange it? It's like saying, let's say you have a lot of gold. Okay, let's say you have a lot of gold and silver, and if I ask you, is exchanging gold allowed? Yes, you can give it to free. You can give it to anyone for free, but you know it is very precious. You will earn money from that, so why would you give it for free? So yes, countries, if they want, they can give carbon credit to other countries. They can transfer it, but why would you transfer? You can earn money from that. It's so precious. So that is why it's not really given. Then I have a question. What is Kyoto Protocol? As I said, right now we have the ongoing COP27. If you guys have been reading the newspapers, I'm sure you would know about this. COP is Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties. So right now, UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework for Convention for Climate Change. This is a UN organization. If you want, I can write it down. United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. This is the organization that has a meeting every single year. So they have a meeting every single year, and every single year the countries around the world come and they decide how can we actually work to reduce global warming. Every single year they have a meeting. This year in Egypt they have 27th meeting. COP means Conference of Parties, where all the parties come together. So in Egypt they are right now meeting, that is a 27th meeting. Similarly, in 1997 they met in Kyoto. Kyoto is a place in Japan where the concept of carbon credits came up. That is called Kyoto Protocol. So Kyoto Protocol was just a kind of document that was signed in Kyoto when the UNFCCC conference was held in Kyoto in 1997. That is it. Then I have a question: who will keep a check on number of carbon credits used, and how nations will get punished if this is not happening? So this is a big problem here. Number one, the question is how or who will keep a check. This is where you have to be dependent on the nations only. You have to hope that nations are giving true report. If they are giving a false report, nothing really can be done. Next part of the question was how will the nations get punished? Now this is where it gets interesting. Kyoto Protocol, when it actually was introduced first, it said that developed nations, those who are developed nations, they compulsory have to abide by this limit. If they don't abide by this limit, there will be a punishment in the form of money. So they will have to submit certain money. But for developing nations such as India, it was not compulsory. They were given advice that you should abide by this limit, but it was not compulsory. But what has happened is most of the developed nations like USA, Canada, etc., they have said no, we will not accept that this is compulsory. So basically, it was supposed to be compulsory for developed nation, but most developed nations like US, Canada, etc., have not accepted it. Some European nations still abide by this, but in reality, no one has really paid a fine. So it's not really a success so far. Then I have a question: those countries have more carbon credit they earn. I am not able to understand what your question is. Developing nations are given carbon credits. Carbon credits basically are given, calculated on a lot of things. Your population, your industrialization level, your need, a lot of things are taken into consideration. Then I have a question: who is the head of giving carbon credit? There is no head of giving carbon credit. There is an organization called UNFCCC. They decided. To whom do companies pay for non-compliance? Again, UNFCCC. They are supposed to get money for this, and they will accumulate this in fund. If someone has to pay a fine, now that money can go to help other developing nations as well. Pravez has a question: why pay and pollute principle is being promoted across the world. See, how else will you punish? This is like asking that if you are jumping the red light, if you are jumping red light in India, if you are overspeeding in India, how are you fined? How are you punished? You are asked to pay a fine only, right? So I can ask you, why are you promoting that people should pay a fine and then they should go above the speed limit? Isn't it the same thing? If someone breaks the law, what will you do? At the end of the day, if someone jumps the red light, someone is overspeeding, you take the money. You can't say, oh, you are promoting overspeeding just by taking money. It is supposed to be a deterrent because no one wants to pay money. Similar is the case here. You can't say that we are encouraging that pollute and pay. No, that's not encouragement. That's a fine that is being put. It's a punishment that is being put. If someone is not caring for that, then you can't really do anything. Okay? I'll take one last question and then we'll go ahead for the second one. I'll take just one last question. So one last question that I will take is, and because it's I'm seeing this, that question is, how do we decide if it's a developing nation or a developed nation? This is one last question that I'll take. So basically, the interesting part is there is no definition of developing or developed nation. There is no definition. There is a definition for least developed countries. LDC. Least developed countries, they have a definition as per WTO. So World Trade Organization has put a definition of LDC, least developed country. But when it comes to developing or the developed nations, in that case, it is left on the country to decide. So for example, India says, we say we are a developing country. Tomorrow, if we get up in the morning and say, today onwards, we are a developed nation, then nothing will change. Means no one can stop us from doing that. It is upon us that we say we are a developing nation. Why do we do that? Because developing nations get certain benefit from international organizations. Like in Kyoto Protocol, for developed nation, it was compulsory to abide by the limit. For developing nation, it was not compulsory. In fact, if you read the news, Donald Trump, when he was the president, he was very angry with India and China. Why? He said that India and China keep calling themselves developing country only. They should call themselves developed nations, not developing. So it depends on the nation's government. They decide whether you want to call yourself a developing or a developed nation. So tomorrow, if Prime Minister says, Mitro, from tomorrow, we are a developed nation, then we will be a developed nation. As simple as that. No one is coming to stop us. Okay? Perfect. Now, the next topic that we want to take up is about Tibetan antelopes. In the meanwhile, I got one more question. Why system like Mars be developed for carbon emissions? System like Mars, I have no idea what is system like Mars. You will have to tell me what the Mars system is you're talking about, but we can take that later. Next one that I want to talk about is Tibetan antelopes. Why are we talking about this? This is a species that was in the news because of this news story, as you can see. Pashmina shawls have Shatoosh guard here, says custom officials, all fluff, counter trade, art traders, etc. Now, what is the news all about? Try and understand this. Now, the news is simple. Recently, certain Pashmina shawls. Now, I'm sure all of you are aware of Pashmina shawls. Now, recently, what happened was certain Pashmina shawls, in them, there were hair of Shatoosh that were found. Now, Shatoosh is actually the Tibetan antelope only. So, Tibetan antelope is called Shatoosh. Its hair were found here. Now, the problem here in this case is that the Shatoosh here is a protected species. Since it's a protected species, it is not allowed to use their hair in any of the products that are sold or that are made. So it is illegal if you are using their hair in the Pashmina shawl. It's a highly protected species under multiple laws in India. That is why it has come in the news that how is it when a species is protected, when a species has been given so much protection under multiple laws, how is it that their hair are being used in Pashmina shawls? That is why it is in the news. Now, most of you would be aware of Pashmina shawl, especially if you are living in northern part of India, where you have cold weather generally in December, Jan, mid-Jan. That is when you actually require Pashmina shawls. Why? Pashmina is actually a kind of a certified wool. It has been given GI tag. It usually has its origin from Kashmir region of India. Now, the great part about Pashmina shawls is if you have the original Pashmina, there are a lot of fake Pashminas available in the market these days. But if you talk about original Pashmina, the interesting part is it is extremely, extremely thin. Extremely thin. But even then, it is very, very warm. Even though it is very thin in size, it can still protect you against a lot of harsh cold weather. That is why it is a lot in demand. Also, because it is very difficult to make, it's not very easy to make. It's a difficult process. Generally, it is not usually made with machines, it's made with hand mostly. Generally, even preparing one single pashmina shawl can take up to 3 days, that is 72 hours or more for one single shawl. And that is why the original pashmina shawl costs a lot of money. It is very, very costly. uh, the normal one starts from 10, 12,000, and thus the normal one, the higher you go, the designs, it depends on the value, but it is very, very costly as compared to the other kind of shawls that you actually have. Now, the word pashmina comes from the Persian word pashm, which actually translates to wool. The reason why it is special, as I told you, very thin, still can protect you against the weather, and it is very, very difficult to make. It's not very easy to make. They are usually obtained from Changthangi goats. So there are specific goats that are in Assam from where you actually get these kind of wools and you make them into pashmina shawls. These animals, that is Changthangi goats, they are not under protected species list. So from them you can extract the wool, from them you can make pashmina shawls. There is no problem with that. The problem is when you are using the wool or the hair cover of shatush, that is Tibetan antelope, because that is a species from where we are not allowed to use that. Now, this goat, that is Changthangi, how does it get its name? It gets its name from a local tribe called Changpa, which they live in Ladakh. They are the ones who usually have the Changthangi coats. They are very famous, especially as I said, for the Pashmina wool only. The Changpa tribe specifically were also in the news. That is, in 2001, they were classified as scheduled tribes under the Government of India's Reservation Program of Affirmative Action. Program of Affirmative Action is just another word given for reservation. So they were given the scheduled tribe status, under which they were given reservation in government jobs and education institutions. It's a pretty backward tribe. They usually work in herding of these kind of goats only. They are restricted. They are not really found in very large numbers. Because they are restricted, the prices are high, and because of that, as I said, the pashmina shawls are not cheap to afford. They are very, very expensive to afford. Also, it is a common practice by manufacturers that pashmina shawl is actually used, and because it is very costly, it is mixed up with other kind of materials. See, if you are buying pashmina shawl, there is no possible way for you to know it is original pashmina, or has it been used by, or has it been mixed up with other kind of materials. Usually the manufacturers, to save on their cost, to save on their input cost, usually mix it with other kind of wool, which is a pretty common practice. That is why in 2019, the BIS, that is the Bureau of Indian Standards, actually set up ISI marks specially for this only, to certify the purity of pashmina shawls, so that people who are buying can actually get to know if they are buying it, if they are buying the original product or not. Now, the reason why it is in the news, as you saw in the headline on the first page, is that in some of the pashmina shawls, recently it has been found that it contains hair of shatush. Now, shatush is also known as a Tibetan antelope. Locally in Tibet, it's also called chiru. Now, this is a protected species as per the IUCN. The IUCN red list says that chiru is near threatened. Because it is near threatened, it has been given a lot of protection by the government of India, and that is why it is illegal to use its hair, to use its wool in any of the commodities. That is why it is in the news. Now, as per CITES, I'm sure you would have heard of CITES, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora. Tibetan antelope, again, their trade and their sale is not allowed. CITES is mainly a treaty that prevents trade in endangered species. It prevents trade in endangered species. So, for example, Government of India has to make sure that no endangered species is imported to India in the form of trade. Similarly, from India, no endangered species should be exported or their products to be made or exported. It is the government's responsibility, those who are signatories of CITES sites. This is what the government has been doing. Now, in order to give you certain more examples, there are many projects that the government has been running, especially to protect certain species. I'll just give you certain examples. There is something called Operation Save Kurma, which is specifically to protect turtles and tortoise. There is Operation Turd Shield, again to stop illegal trade of turtles. Operation Lesk Now, this is to gain attention of enforcement agencies towards trade in wildlife. Then there's Operation Soft Gold, Clean Art, WildNet, Burbill, etc. So there are a lot of these projects that are going on. These kind of facts you can expect and match the column form in the prelims examinations. So especially in those kind of years when you have a lot of these species in the news, endangered species, threatened, near threatened species, when these are in the news, these kind of questions that match the column form can very easily be asked. So you can actually take a look at that. Okay. This is the kind of question that you can expect in the mains exam. Poaching is one of the major issues in conservation of wild animals. Discuss how real-time monitoring can help combat poaching as well as reduce the incidence of animal-human conflict. So you can actually try and see if you can write a question to that. Let me see if there are a few questions. A lot of questions from the previous, okay. A lot of questions from previous topic itself. One question, what is the relationship between carbon credit and greenwashing? I told you specifically, maybe you are not listening. Let me repeat that. The difference or the connection between carbon credit and greenwashing is simple. What was greenwashing as we discussed? Greenwashing means when countries lie about something that they have done to save the environment. So let's assume a country lies that we have planted 10 crore new trees or 100 crore more trees so that they can earn carbon credit. So they are doing greenwashing, making false promises to earn carbon credit. That is the connection between the two. If greenwashing is not stopped, the countries will keep on earning fake carbon credits, which will harm the environment in the long run. Then I have another question. How we decide that these are developed nations or not? As I told you specifically, repeatedly, nations themselves decide we are a developed nation or not. There is no one else that decides. So European nations mostly have called themselves a developed nation. So they are in the category of developed nation, as simple as that. You and me, we don't decide that. So Deep is saying, what are punishments available if country will follow no rule? Uh, Sad to say that there are not many punishments that are available if a country follows no rule. And it applies to almost every category. You see the International Court of Justice, ICJ. When ICJ gives any judgment against any country, powerful countries usually don't accept that. They don't abide by that. What happens? Nothing happens. Absolutely nothing. It's a harsh reality. Even in terms of climate change, environmental protection, countries make promises. Even if, when they don't abide by that, the law is that yes, you will have to give certain fine, but usually it is not enforced. There are a lot of reasons why this happens. See, the reason why a lot of nations don't want this kind of a thing to be binding is that all nations are not equal. This is the biggest problem. When I say all nations are not equal means some are developed nations, some are developing nations, and some are least developed nations. So there are usually three categories of nation: developed, developing, and least developed. Now the problem is everyone accepts, and it is perfectly right. Everyone accepts that the developed nations are the ones that should spend the money on everyone. The developed nations are the ones who have harmed the environment the most, so it should be binding on them. They say that no. Either make it binding on everyone, either you say that every country is together in this. If any of the country does not follow the rule, they should pay a fine. Either you do this or do not make it binding for anyone. This is what they say. When you make it binding for some countries and others are not given this kind of a punishment, or others are not told that it is binding on you, this is where the problem starts. in every environmental meeting that is held across the world, the biggest debate is about developing and the developed nations. Developing nations say the developed nations should pay the money. Developed nations say, look at India, look at China, they make so much pollution. Why is it that they should not pay money? Why is it that they are not stopping their pollution? So it's a divide between the two. Unless you have an agreement where all the nations are considered equal, it will be very difficult for this kind of agreement to be binding, because the reality is that nations are not equal at the end of the day. This is where we have the concept of common but differentiated responsibility, meaning that it is the responsibility of every nation to stop pollution, but the responsibility is not equal. Some nations have a higher responsibility, while some nations have a lower responsibility. So it is common but differentiated responsibility. So again, the short answer is no, we cannot force a country to follow this up. And I told you long answer also. Why? Because the countries don't want that I should be held accountable and other should not. As I discussed, Donald Trump, when he was a president, he specifically said this. Why is it that India and China are still developing nations? They should be developed. Then I have a question. Can't we just extract hair from their body like we do from sheep without any harm? See, the problem is, if a certain species has been given hair, first of all, understand this. If a species has been given hair, there is a specific purpose for that. Nature has given them hair because it is important for them to survive in those climatic conditions. So when you take off hair and it takes some time to grow them back, it will be very, very harmful for them, because the climatic condition where they are living, it's extreme cold. So when you take off hair from them and you actually leave them bare bodied for some days, it can be very harmful for them, number one. Secondly, it's easy to say that we can just take off hair. Just imagine yourself. Let's say you go to a salon to get a haircut. You're a boy or a girl, whoever. You go to a salon, you get a haircut. Now, when you go to a salon to get a haircut, you sit on the seat and you are sitting like this, just stable, so that they can cut your hair. Just imagine you running around that, no, 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 I don't want to give my hair. And you running around the whoever the beauty expert, etc., running after you with a scissor, no, no, I will cut your hair. Is there not a chance of you being harmed? Just imagine that. You don't want to give your hair, you're running and someone is running after you with the scissor. No, 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 I will cut your hair. So just imagine that kind of a situation. So with these animals also, when you are actually trying to take their hair, they are not in agreement with this. So it's always a chance where you can actually harm the animal, when you're going to hurt the animal. So that has to be resolved. Then I have a question. What are wet markets? So wet markets basically are those places where usually fresh sea animals are sold. So let's say a fish or these kind of animals which basically are taken from the sea. So seafood. So fish or shrimps, lobsters, where they are freshly taken out from the river and they are sold right away in the market. Those are called wet markets basically. In wet markets, these animals might not even be dead. Some of them are alive. When you buy them, they are then killed in front of your eyes. Some of them are freshly caught. So that those are wet markets. Nandini is saying, what is poaching? So poaching basically means killing of animals illegally, trading them. That is all under poaching. Samasti saying, why Shatouche hair used in making shawl? It made it even costlier. No, no, no. Shatouche hair is not making it costlier. So the cost, it is already costlier when it is actually being made of the Changthangi coat. That goat is the one which is costlier. Shatouche hair is not that costly because you are doing it illegally, you are extracting it illegally. It did not make it even more costlier. Then I have a question. Any suggestions for real-time monitoring of poaching? It's difficult to actually monitor everything real time. Some things that you can do is put more cameras, have more observers. These are some of the things that you can do. Have them in a restricted area. In restricted areas, make rules for hunting should be very, very difficult, very stringent, these kind of things. These are the only things that you can do and hope for. Then I have a question. Chiru hair using in making shawl, will it reduce the cost? I don't know. When something is illegal, you don't know the cost of it, right? It is like saying Sir, if I mix uranium with gold, would it reduce the cost of gold? I don't know. It depends at what price you get the uranium, and when you mix it up, is it even allowed or not? These are hypothetical questions. What if I mix, reduce the cost or increase the cost? That really depends. Okay, perfect. Perfect. So these were the main questions that I got from this part. Let's move on to the third part. I don't know from where the question of wet markets came in. Basically, the entire world, and maybe you heard about it somewhere else, but the entire world, at least me and many other people, heard the word wet market for the first time when the COVID-19 crisis started. Because allegations were that COVID virus actually started from a wet market. So it was actually a wet market in Wuhan from where the COVID virus started. It was an allegation. So that is when the wet market thing came up. Okay. Okay, I'll take one more question from the first topic. Is carbon credit the same like India issuing carbon certificates to industries? Yes, Mohan, it is absolutely the same. So I'll tell you what this is. So basically, let's assume that India has been given 500 carbon credits. Okay, let's assume this. Now, how will Indian government use this? Indian government will now distribute this to industries. Like Indian government will tell Reliance that we are giving you 100 carbon credits out of this. Tata, they will say, we'll give you 50 carbon credits. Adani, they will say, we'll give you 120 carbon credits. Now use. Now, if Tata says, no, I want to buy more, then they will have to pay to the government. Government will pay to second government, etc. So just like carbon credit trading happens between the countries, it can happen between companies also. Because if a certain nation is given certain carbon credits, how will they use it? They will distribute it to the other companies in the country, and that is how they will use it. As simple as that. Okay. Lot of questions coming. Lot of questions. Okay, I'll take one more question. I think we should have a webinar just to take your question, right? Not teach anything, just take questions. I think you will be happier with that. So I have one more question here. Sir, why can't developed nations declare themselves as developing nations in order to escape from binding nature of carbon credit on developed countries? See, you should be happy that they are not doing this. Why to suggest them these ideas? Because some countries really want to work in nations or in the world's favor. Let's just try and understand that some nations which are really developed, which have money, they want to do something good for the world, so they are happy being the developed nation. Why do you want to call themselves a developing nation? See, developing nation is a demotion. So why would you want to lower your prestige? That is not something that the nation would want to do just for getting some cheap offers, because developed nations are developed because of a reason, right? The reason is that they have the money, they have the resources. Why do they want to now go into saying no, we are a developing nation only? So they can do that. It's not that developed nation can't call themselves developing nation, but understand this. See, I'll take a very simple example. You all know politics, you all understand politics. So let's assume there is a nation, any developed nation, take Italy, France, Germany, Japan, whatever. Let's assume Japan tomorrow says we are now a developing nation, not a developed nation. Do you think the opposition members of that country will leave the government? In the next election, they will say, oh, see, such a bad government. 100 years we were a developed nation. In their rule, we are now becoming a developing nation. See, they are taking the country backward. So it works like that. You can't just take those decisions randomly. Okay? So a lot of questions on developing nations. I think that should end it. Perfect. Now, the next topic that I want to take that is in the news is the Polavaram Dam. Where is the Polavaram Dam, by the way? Where is the Polavaram Dam, by the way? Very quick to answer, Chinna, Leela, Shravan. Very good. Perfect. Quick to answer, Andhra Pradesh. So it is in Andhra Pradesh. Okay, now you can stop answering. Okay, you can stop answering. Stop answering. Don't fill the chat with Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Okay, it's Andhra Pradesh. Now, why is it in the news? What is happening with the dam? Let's try and understand this. Now, this dam actually has been in the news for multiple reasons. See, unfortunately, there are some projects which are destined to be in the news. There are some projects that just keep on coming in the news for one reason, then the other reason, then the third, fourth reason. This seems to be one of those projects that it just keeps on coming in the news. So basically, there have been multiple news about it that funding problem is occurring. Now the other states, the state that are nearby, are saying, no, we are not happy with this. You are taking away our territory. Those kind of things are happening. So basically, let's understand what is this project all about. Why is it there so much backlash and so much concern about that? So let me first tell you where exactly is this. If you see this map, so this is where the Polavaram Dam is. This is where the Polavaram Dam is, as you can see. Now, it has a lot of different uh, needs, or it has a lot of different objectives. For example, the first big objective, that we have is transfer of water from Godavari to Krishna River. So this is one of the objectives. There are multiple objectives, but one of them is that from Godavari River, which you can see here, they want to transfer water to Krishna River. Now, see, this interlinking of rivers, has been one of the most ambitious project ever since the Modi government came to power. So ever since the Modi government came to power, they have been trying to ensure that they link rivers. Now, why would you link rivers, and what is the objective? There are certain rivers which are overflowing. Now, when they overflow, means there are floods in the nearby areas. On the other hand, there are some rivers which have lack of water. So it is very logical. Rivers that are overflowing, from there you should transfer surplus water to the other rivers which don't have enough water. As simple as that. So Godavari overflows a lot of times. It results in floods. So the idea is that we will actually transfer some water to the Krishna River, and for that a canal is being built, and for storing the extra water. It's not as easy that you can just fill up, or you can just dig a canal and the water will start flowing. You have to make a reservoir, you have to make a huge dam, see how much water will you store, when the time comes, when you have to transfer the water, when you can't transfer water. A lot of technicalities go into that. The first objective, as I said, is to ensure that there is interlinking of rivers. Water can flow from Godavari to Krishna. Second, for irrigation purposes. Second, for irrigation purposes. So irrigation purposes, as you know, India has always been an mainly agricultural nation. Our farmers always need water for irrigation needs. So this project will actually store a lot of water from the Godavari River, and it will be used for the interlinking or for irrigation purposes as well. Not just this, we are actually hoping to use it for navigation purposes also. Now, I'm not sure if you remember or not, ever since Modi government came to power, in the initial years, in the first term of the Modi government, they announced a lot of very important projects. For example, they announced interlinking of river project. One of the other projects that they announced was, we will focus a lot on national waterways, or we should actually have inland navigation. Inland navigation means that you should transport stuff through water, even within the country. See, India is blessed in the sense, you have to understand, not many countries have so many rivers. India is blessed to have so many rivers, and we have such a situation when you have so many rivers, that means you can take advantage of that. And to take advantage of that, you actually have to ensure that they are actually ideal for navigation purposes, for transportation, etc. All of that can be done with this. Now, these are the good parts about the dam, but there are a lot of bad parts because of which it is in the news. Now, what is the bad part? Let's try and understand something about the project first. Now, it is an under construction project, because understand this, whenever you build a dam are some of the longest time taking projects ever. Usually when you build a big dam, they take a huge amount of time. Also, if you see the history of India, dams are those projects that usually face the most opposition from anywhere. From anywhere. You look at the Narmada Bachao Andolan. The Narmada Bachao Andolan has been going on for such a long time, mainly because of the dam that was being built on the Narmada River. So whenever dams are built, there is usually a lot of protest, and there are reasons for that. The first reason is, whenever you build a dam, you require huge amount of land, especially when the dam is a reservoir dam. Now, I am not sure if you know the difference or not. So basically, there are two types of dams. There are usually two types of dams. One are called reservoir dams, and second is called run of the river dams. So these are the two different types of dams, reservoir dams and another river dams. So the difference is very simple. Now let's assume there is water coming in from here. Now what can the government do in between? To build a dam, let's say we want to build a dam. Now the purpose of building a dam, let's say maybe to generate electricity or hydroelectricity. First thing that the government can do, run off the river. Run off the river means over here we will set up turbine. I hope all of you know what is a turbine. I hope all of you know what is a turbine. If you don't know what is a turbine, so basically turbine is a kind of an instrument. If you actually rotate the handle of the turbine, electricity will be generated. It has magnets inside of it. When you actually rotate it, electric field is generated, and that actually gets converted to electricity. As simple as that. Please remember this. Doesn't matter how you are producing electricity. Hydroelectric, coal, even nuclear, in all these power plants, electricity is generated by turbine only. The only difference is how you actually rotate the turbine. That is the only difference. In dams, you are rotating turbine by actually letting water fall on this, it will rotate. In nuclear, what happens? Steam is generated. By that steam, you rotate the turbine. In coal power plants, again, thermal power plants, you generate steam. From that steam, turbine is rotated. In all these power plants, it is turbine only that is making electricity, nothing else. So basically, in run-of-the-river dams, you put a turbine here, water will come, turbine will rotate, and water will go. Simple. These are run-of-the-river dams. These are the easiest to make. They don't have any problems. You don't require a large area for that. But usually these are not made. Why? Because if you make run-of-the-river dam, you can only make electricity till the time you are getting water. There are most rivers in India don't get water 12 months in a year, right? For example, let's say there is no water coming in from behind. If there's no water coming in, the turbine will not rotate. There will be nothing, no electricity. So that is run-of-the-river dam, no problem, made very simply. Second option is reservoir dam. Now these are difficult to make. Reservoir dam means this is a river. Now you store water in a huge reservoir. This is a huge reservoir where you have stored the water. This is a reservoir. These are huge reservoirs. Whenever you want to produce electricity, you open up the gates, water will go out. This water will move the turbine and electricity will be generated. Simple. And then the water will go away. These are called reservoir dams. Reservoir means you're actually storing water in a huge reservoir, opening up the gate whenever you want. The water goes out, turbine moves, the water goes away. You basically close the gate. It's as simple as that. These are called reservoirs. Now, usually around the world, in India also, governments make reservoir dams. Why? Because they give you an option whenever you want to make electricity, you can. You don't have to depend on water coming in from behind. You store the water. Also, these are very, very helpful for actually protecting people in floods. See, when we have a monsoon in India, there are times when we have huge rainfall. When we have huge rainfall, that means water is coming in very large numbers, in very large quantity. Rather than letting it go, we can store it in the reservoir so that the river is not overflowing. So we can stop river from overflowing also with the help of reservoirs. So these reservoirs are very, very huge. These are huge reservoirs. You can't even imagine how big they are. They basically spread across acres and acres of land. So these reservoir dams, the Polavaram Dam is a reservoir dam only. When they are made, they require huge amount of land. Huge amount of land is required means a lot of people have to be displaced. They have to vacate their house. You have to acquire land. Even if some of them are not ready to give you land, then it becomes a problem. Then you have to build it. Plus, understand this. When you are saving such huge quantity of water, dams have to be made in good quality. Even if there is small leakage, it will lead to a lot of devastation. You've seen it in a lot of movies also, or not just movies. Uh, Unfortunately, there have been times where India has faced tragedy where dams have actually cracked, where the construction quality was not good. When a dam cracks, it is the worst kind of calamity that you can actually imagine, because so much water comes all of a sudden, people have nowhere to go. Thousands and thousands of people die whenever there is a dam collapse. It's a huge problem. So the Polavaram Dam is this kind of a reservoir dam. Now, first problem, as I said, is people living nearby do not give their land. They don't want to give away their land, number one. Second problem is many environmentalists say that this is not a good way. Why? Environmentalists say that when you have such a reservoir, what happens on the bottom of it? On the bottom of it, there are actually some plants that grow and there are some methane that starts to develop. So many environmentalists say on the bottom of these dams, methane generation takes place, which is also bad. Also, when there is too much water, when there is a lot of rainfall that is coming in, you have no option but to open up the gate, because the reservoir can also overflow. So at the end of the day, you have to stop reservoir also from overflowing. So it is a very complicated kind of a thing. Now, this project is under construction. It's a national project. What do you mean by national project? In simple terms, national project means funding is coming from the center government. As simple as that. If state government is spending money, they will get reimbursed from center. This is a national project. Now, this project, as I said, is being built on Godavari River. It will transfer water to Krishna River as well. The reservoir is so huge that reservoir will actually be in some parts of Chhattisgarh and Odisha as well. It is so huge, it will not just be in Andhra Pradesh, but it will take some areas of the nearby states as well. The project started long time back in 2008. 2008 means pre-2014. Pre-2014 means when Telangana and Andhra Pradesh were one single state. So after that, a lot of things have happened. As you can see, Andhra Pradesh has been bifurcated, and Andhra Pradesh government has extended the completion date to 2022 Kharif season, but still doesn't look like it will be completed. See, since 2008, it has been building. So many governments have come, many governments have gone, but it is still just going on. The project has a lot of objectives, as we discussed, necessary for irrigation potential, domestic industrial water supply will happen. See, when you build a dam, and when you store water, then it depends on you how and where you want to send that water. Building the reservoir is the toughest part. Once you have built that, then you can see where to build canal, where to send water, where will you supply water from there. It will be used for utilization of hydroelectricity, for development of pisciculture, navigation, etc. It will also help in flood control, as I said. Godavari floods are very, very infamous, so that will also help in stopping the flood, where you can store water in the reservoir itself, and will help in navigation also. Navigation how? Transportation of forest produce, food grains, etc. can also happen very, very easily. These are some of the objectives. However, there are a lot of concerns. Now, these concerns are true with every dam. Every dam. So if there is a question about any other dam, you can write the same points and the same will be applicable. For example, rehabilitation. The people who are actually giving away their land, how will you rehabilitate them? Rehabilitation means where else will you buy them house? Where will they be shifted? Now the problem with this kind of a thing is most of the people who are asked to give away their land are farmers actually. The problem that you have to understand is farmers are connected to their land. You can't just say, give us land and we'll give you land somewhere else. What if this was a fertile land and wherever you are now sending them is not fertile? What will the farmer do? A farmer can't say, I will work from home. For a farmer, his land is everything. So if you are taking away land of the farmer and you are saying we will rehabilitate you somewhere else, it is not that easy. It is so easy to say. But the reality is, if you take their land from here, The problem here is that will the other land which you will give to farmer, would that be fertile enough? Would that be a land where they can actually take up agriculture or not? This is still a problem that has been unresolved. Destruction of nature. As I said, destruction of nature. When you build such a reservoir area, you have to cut down a lot of trees, cut down a lot of forest. So that leads to destruction of nature. Not just this, many animals also will have to shift from that place to somewhere else. So shifting of animals, cutting down vegetation, that also remains a concern, and it affects fauna. As I said, so territorial animals, etc., they have to change their lifestyle. As per multiple news articles, about 34 villages. Just imagine how huge the reservoir will be. 34 villages will be submerged once the dam is completed. The height of the dam is 41.5 meter. Huge dam. 7,000 families will be evacuated. Locals are demanding more money. This is where, and I'll connect it to something else, this is where NGOs also come into the picture. Now, have you heard of an NGO? Tell me this. Have you heard this name, Greenpeace? Have you heard of this called Greenpeace? Yes, you have heard of this, right? Now, if you actually see, if you have heard of this, great. If no, don't worry, don't worry. If you've not heard of this, don't worry. Okay. Stop writing yes, no. Okay, stop writing yes, no. Now, what is Greenpeace? Greenpeace is a very famous NGO. It's not an Indian NGO, it's an international NGO. It works around the world. As the name suggests, they work for conservation of environment. They usually, what they do is, whenever they see around the world any government implementing an environment project or implementing a project that will harm the environment, they come and protest against it. They protest so much that Indian government has banned this NGO. Many nations have banned this NGO, not just Indian government, many nations have banned this. Now, what happens in this case and why I'm connecting this here is, let's assume the government announces that we are building the Polavaram Dam. For this, these are the villages. You have to vacate your land, you have to give away the land, and we will give you money for that. Now, what will happen is the Greenpeace NGO will come in these villages and tell the people, no, 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 don't say yes. We will get more money from the government. Government is saying 5 lakh, don't worry, we will make the government pay you 20 lakh rupees. The only thing that you have to do is support us. When someone from the government comes, don't talk to them. We will talk on your behalf. This is how NGOs such as Greenpeace come in the picture. Government says that these kind of NGOs want to stop India's development. They come in specifically so that India cannot develop. They come in specifically so that our infrastructure doesn't develop. NGOs say, no, we are doing it for the environment. We do it in every country. India says, you don't do it in America. You don't protest against any other country. Why is it that you're protesting here only? So whenever you see that people are refusing to vacate land, this is usually because some NGO has come in. Now, I'm not saying NGOs are always good or always bad. There are NGOs which work for the people's interest. There are NGOs that have ulterior motives. But this is why many NGOs have actually been banned in India, including Greenpeace. Greenpeace has also been banned in India. Now, the major problem with the dam, apart from land rehabilitation, etc., is the funding part. See, these projects require a lot of funds, huge number of funds. So what happened was, when Andhra Pradesh, Telangana got bifurcated, so what happened was, try and understand this. Now, when Andhra Pradesh, Telangana got bifurcated, what happened was, most of the areas of the state which had development, which gave good revenue to the government, those districts went to Telangana. Like Hyderabad itself went to Telangana. Most of the developed areas went to Telangana. Andhra Pradesh, on the other hand, or the new divided state of Andhra Pradesh, did not have a lot of developed areas. So in 2014, when the states got divided, Andhra Pradesh had been demanding a special package. Andhra Pradesh government said to the central government, we want a special package for help, give us an economic package for development. So central government said, okay, we are not giving a special package, but we will give funding to some of your projects like this. That is why the central government announced that Polavaram project is now a national project. Why? As I said, because national project means funding will come from the center. If states have spent any money, they will be reimbursed. But this is where the problem started. The problem was central government said that we told you funding will only be for irrigation component of the project. So this project basically, as we discussed, the project has many different parts. With the help of project, irrigation will be done. With the help of project, water can be stored. With the help of project, water can go from Godavari River to Krishna River, many other components. Central government said, no, 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 no. We only gave funding for irrigation part of the project. Remaining part, don't ask us. You take care yourself. This is what the central government said to Andhra Pradesh government when they asked for money. They said, no, 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 no. We only wanted to fund irrigation component, not the other ones. But state government said, no, you promised something else, don't do this. So finally, central government has agreed, okay, we will fund the entire project altogether. First, central government refused. They said, no, we only will give fund to irrigation part of the project. But now they have agreed, okay, we'll give funding to the entire project. However, getting money from or release from the government's purse is the most difficult thing ever. Most difficult thing ever. Government promises a lot of things. Making promises is the easy part. Getting money out of the government purse is very difficult. This is what the Andhra Pradesh government is now facing. Very, very difficult to actually get funding. People are not giving away their land. A lot of issues are happening. That is why a lot of deadlines have been missed, and the new deadline is June 2024. It remains to be seen whether or not the 2024 deadline is met or whether it will go even further. This is the kind of question that you can expect. Discuss the importance of Polavaram project. Support your answer with merits and demerits of the project. Whew. Let me see a few questions here. Are the pledges that India makes on platforms such as COP binding on India? No, absolutely not. Not binding on any country. Then I have a question in capital letters. How to stop greenwashing? When you write in capital letters, it seems like you are screaming on me. Don't write in capital letters. Okay. How to stop greenwashing? Even the UN doesn't know how to stop greenwashing to be true. So there is no proper answer to this. You can only hope and depend that the nations will realize the importance of telling the truth to the world, and maybe they can come up, because the problem is monitoring these kind of things is next to impossible. No country will allow that come into our country, monitor this. So how to stop greenwashing? Very difficult. I hope there was an answer to this, but there's no really answer to this. Then I have a question. Who monitors these carbon credits? Only one country is ahead. As I said, carbon credits are monitored, or the emissions that you do are monitored by your own government. So government itself has to tell the numbers. There is no one authority that will keep an eye, and that is why this kind of an issue has not been successful. Then I have a question. How methane is generated in water? So basically what happens is, in the reservoir projects, some plant life starts to develop on the basis, on the ground where the reservoir actually is. So at the base of the reservoir, some plants actually start to grow, and because they're submerged in the water, they actually start to die, and when they die, these plants actually emit methane. That is the problem. Then I have a question. Why during flood local authorities open the dam when it's for reservoir dam? Because when there is flooding, or it's not that during flooding they open up the dams. During heavy rains they have to open up the dam slowly, because if they don't open up the dam, then the reservoir will overflow. Because reservoir also has a certain limit, right? How much water it can hold. So when they think that the water from reservoir will overflow, then they have no option but to open up the gates. So that is what happens. Then I have a question. Do Lote ecosystem is transferred to Lente ecosystem with construction of dam? Yes. Then I have a question. Can you repeat about release of methane in reservoirs? I just did. Then I have question, which type of dams are more common in India, river or reservoir one? All around the world, reservoir dams are the ones that are more common. Reservoir dam is a more newer technology, harder technology, but that is the one that makes more economic sense. So usually those are the ones that are constructed when there is no area available, when you don't have any option, when you don't have so much free land that is available, then you might go with run of the river dam. But run of the river dams are not that useful. They are only made if you have no other option in a very small area where the river water is flowing and you want to use it for turbine. Only then, usually if it is possible to build a reservoir, even smaller one, countries usually go with reservoir dams only because they are the ones who are which are considered as better. Okay. Some people are saying issue with the mic. Issue with the mic. Okay. Is the audio not clear? What exactly is the issue? Is the audio not clear? Okay. Some people are saying no issues. Clear now. There's a noise. Okay. Echo. Static noise. Wait. Just check once. Check once. Is it better? Some grumpy noise in between. Okay. Is it better? No. No. Okay. Just give me 30 seconds. I'll switch off my camera. Don't go anywhere. Just give me 30 seconds. Let me fix this up. Okay. Shh. Uh, Give me a minute. Let me change the mic quickly. Let me change the mic quickly. We'll try and get this resolved. Don't go anywhere. Just give me 1 minute. I'll switch off my camera. In the meanwhile, just change the mic and come back. Thank you. Is it better now? How about this? Better? Much better. Okay. Thank you. Perfect. 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 Okay. Okay. And those who are saying mic was okay, the previous one also, no worries. Now it is okay for everyone. So perfect. Thank you so much. I have a question. Is interlinking of river has proven out to be successful through any dam till this date? In India, not really. It's still an early stage kind of an idea. So I won't say that it has turned out to be successful, but it is something that is an ongoing thing. You have to see in the long run if these things are successful or not. Perfect. Okay, I'll take one more question. What are the neighboring states' issues with Polavaram project? First, neighboring state issue, as I said, the reservoir comes into their territory also a bit, so they are not happy with that. No one wants to give away their territory, even a small piece of it. And they are concerned if there is some leaking of water, then it might affect their territory as well. So right now, you can't say that there are a lot of concerns in those states. They are really mostly concerned right now about their territory, but they are thinking in the long run, what if there is some leakage? Because then if there is a problem, it will impact every state wherever it is. That is mainly the bigger problem. Okay, perfect. Shweta, the voice was safe for your ears earlier as well. Don't worry. Perfect. Time to move on. The next topic that we have is all the way from NASA, coming specially for you. So, NASA has recently announced a new project, that is Loft ID mission. Now, what exactly is a Loft ID mission? Why is it in the news? How does it work? Let's try and understand this. Now, It was in the news because of this headline. NASA completes the Loft ID technology demonstration designed to land humans on Mars. Now, what exactly is this? How does it work? What is the problem? Let's try and understand this. There are different types of projects that are undertaken by agencies such as NASA, ISRO, etc. There are different categories of projects. For example, one category of project can be manned and unmanned. Manned and unmanned. Then there are some projects which come under two categories of hard landing and soft landing. Let's try and understand the difference. First, manned and unmanned. As the name suggests, manned missions are the ones where there are human beings on board. Manned missions are always much tougher, much more difficult, much more dangerous. For example, ISRO has been able to reach Mars, but not on a manned mission. It's an unmanned mission. So far in the history of India, ISRO has never sent a manned mission. Understand this. ISRO has never sent a manned mission. We are planning now for Gaganyaan. Gaganyaan will be India's first manned mission where there will be a human being inside the spacecraft. But so far, India has not done that because sending a manned mission is very dangerous, very difficult. Even if something goes wrong, you will not be able to retrieve that. If a machine goes wrong, something wrong with the machine, there's no problem with that. There's economic cost attached to it, but at least human life is not at stake. There are so many space programs that have actually been unsuccessful, but we have not really worried about that because they were unmanned. Sending a manned mission requires a higher order technology. You have to maintain the proper temperature, which is appropriate for human beings. The situation or the condition has to be appropriate for human beings. If you have to make them come back, then it has to be a perfectly designed spacecraft that can come back as well, re-enter the atmosphere. A lot of things have to go right in a manned mission. That is why sending a manned mission is very, very rare. Very, very rare. Usually manned missions, even if they go to either space or the moon. They will go to either space or the moon, but we don't send manned missions to other heavenly bodies. There are reasons for that. As I said, it's very, very challenging. Now, apart from that, there are two other types of missions depending upon how you reach your destination. There is hard landing and there is soft landing. What is the difference between the two? As the name suggests, soft landing means you just drop there. Doesn't matter how you drop, even if some of your equipment is, doesn't matter. If you have landed on the surface somehow, that is called a hard landing. Hard landing again means when you actually land on that particular surface without bothering if you are safe or not. But with human beings, you can't do that. If there are human beings on board, if there are human beings in your spacecraft, then you can't have a hard landing. This is where you have to have soft landing. Soft landing means a controlled landing, where you land on the surface in such a way that there is no harm. You navigate properly. For example, you land like an airplane. When you are flying in an aircraft, when you land on the airport, that is a soft landing. When you crash, that is also landing only, but that is hard landing. You don't want to crash. If you remember recently, when ISRO sent Chandrayaan 2, you read in the news, Chandrayaan 2 was not completely a success. Why? Because Chandrayaan 2 wanted to have a soft landing, which was not possible. Sorry. Chandrayaan 2 actually had a hard landing, and that is why we were not able to retrieve the rover. The rover did not work well. So in the end, it was not a 100% successful mission. Now, the point is, these two things are connected. These two things are connected, meaning that if you actually want to send a manned mission, that is, if you want to send a mission where there are human beings on board, it has to be a soft landing only. It cannot be a hard landing. Now, this is very easy to say, but very, very difficult to achieve. Why? Because see, when you are sending any spacecraft to outer space, it goes in very, very high speed, very high velocity. But when you have to make a soft landing, you have to reduce the speed. You have to reduce the velocity so that when they land, they don't damage themselves. This is where the challenge starts. Now, what NASA has done is NASA has actually demonstrated a technology called Loft ID, using which they say that they can actually land human beings also on Mars. How? They are saying that we have been able to bring this technology wherein we will be able to reduce our speed and land properly. And we might see astronauts in space very, very, very soon. Now, this LOFT ID stands for Low Earth Orbit Flight Test of an Inflatable Decelerator. In the entire thing, the most important thing that you have to understand is what is inflatable decelerator. What is inflatable? Inflatable means when you put air into something and it expands. Like balloon is inflatable. Balloon usually will not have air. When you put air into it, it will actually start to expand, right? So that is called inflatable. Decelerator means technology which will reduce the speed. For example, when you actually jump from an airplane, I hope you don't, but when you jump from an airplane, you have a parachute with you. What does a parachute do? How is it that you are safe when you are with the parachute and you are not safe when you're not with the parachute? You are safe with the parachute. Why? Because it reduces your speed. It is a decelerator. It actually blocks the air. It creates friction between you and the atmosphere, and you land at a very slow speed. That is why you don't get hurt. Simple. Similarly, there will be an inflatable decelerator, means when you're about to land, it will inflate, reduce the speed so that you can actually land very, very easily. That is the idea. So NASA says that we have actually used parachutes and rockets to decelerate people, vehicle, and hardware, so that when they descend means when they actually drop down, reduce their height, and they can land very, very easily. What NASA has done is NASA has been developing this technology called hypersonic inflatable aerodynamic decelerator. This is a technology that they have been developing, which they have used. The Loft ID was the next step of this program. So HIAD is the entire program that NASA has been running. It's a part of this program under which NASA has been able to successfully do this. If you see this graph from NASA, so when it goes up, it takes a cylindrical kind of a shape, and when it actually has to land, it starts to inflate. It starts to inflate so that it can reduce its speed and then it can land very easily. That is the entire project that has been told. Now, as I said, NASA is also trying to use it for re-entry. What is re-entry? Re-entry means when the spacecraft has to come back to Earth. Because again, the big difference between manned and unmanned missions are manned missions have to come back. You can't leave the human being there. Tata, bye bye, now start. No, you have to bring them back. So that is the most challenging part. Now, you all would know how Kalpana Chawla sadly died. Kalpana Chawla died because the aircraft that was coming back, the spacecraft that was coming back into the atmosphere, that actually that exploded. It had so much friction, it dragged against the atmosphere that it exploded. Everyone who was on board that aircraft, that spacecraft, actually passed away. So re-entering into the Earth's atmosphere is very, very difficult. Why? Because of the speed, because of the friction that you face against the atmosphere. So re-entering the atmosphere again will be with the help of HIAD. Now, as I said again, re-entering the atmosphere without any human being is easy, because you don't have to worry. Even if the machine doesn't succeed, fine. But when you have human beings inside of it, that is when it becomes difficult. That is where you have to be very, very careful. Now, it will allow the payloads which are much more heavier, and it will also allow landing at higher altitudes. So they will be able to ensure that their payloads, means the machines that they are sending, are very, very safe. This HIAD device, HIAD is their entire program, using which they are trying to ensure soft landing, which is much, much safer for the human beings for manned missions. This HIAD will mainly consist of inflatable structure like a parachute. This will have protection through different kind of thermal materials that are used that will be able to sustain very high temperatures. If they drag against the atmosphere, they will have heat energy, but even then, they will not be destroyed. NASA is saying that they are using synthetic fibers which are 15 times stronger than steel, so there is no chance of these being damaged. This is what NASA has said so far, and it is still a technology which is in its experimentation stage. It remains to be seen how and when it will be used on real human beings. It's a kind of question that you can expect from here. What is loft ID test technology? How can this be a game changer in the future space missions? Before I start with the next topic, which will be discussed in detail, let me see if I have a few questions. I have a question. Did government agree to pay 10 lakh to each family? I don't know. Not to me. During elections, Shri Amit Shah did say that 15 lakhs will be given to everyone, black money will be brought back, but I don't know if you're talking about that or not. But I don't know if government promised 10 lakhs to each family or not to my family at least. NK saying, so loft ID and the use of HIAD reduces speed and makes soft and safe landing on Mars. Yes, that is what they're claiming. They have not tested it on Mars, but they are claiming that we can use the same technology to send human beings to Mars as well. Bhanu has a question. Drag force means, so Bhanu, for example, if a spacecraft enters the Earth's atmosphere again. Now, what is atmosphere? Atmosphere is a layering of heavy gaseous material on the surface of the Earth. When something enters into that, it goes through the atmosphere. There is a friction that takes place. This friction is called drag. That will increase the temperature of that spacecraft manyfold. It can also destroy it. That is called drag. Okay, Surbhi saying in the past also NASA has sent moon manned missions. Can't they use the same tech again? Have they sent the moon manned mission? Okay, just kidding. So, see, with changing times, they also have to have newer technology. Plus, understand this. The purpose of any space project is not just that you have to send something somewhere. For example, when they send human beings to moon, it was not really about any experimentation. They just wanted to prove we can send human beings to moon. Now it is not just about sending people, because what will you do if you just send someone to Mars? The point is, when you now take on missions, let's say you want to send someone to Mars or somewhere else, you want to send heavy machinery also, payloads as they are called. Payloads are the ones that decide if the mission will be successful or not, to conduct experimentation of atmosphere, soil, water, etc. That makes it much more challenging. That makes the entire project much heavier as compared to other projects that are taken up. That is where the technology has to evolve. So this is why they can't just keep on using the older technology. And again, as other people will say, did they even send people to moon? I don't know. So, okay. Then someone is asking difference between loft ID and HIAD. So HIAD is the entire project using which NASA is trying to ensure soft landing. Loft ID is a part of that project. It's a component wherein they were successfully able to demonstrate technology in the low Earth orbit. Now they might test it in higher Earth orbit as well. So Loft ID is just a part of HIAD project, and they have been successful in doing this. People are still stuck on carbon credits. What is the range of carbon credits given to a country? You can check this from UNFCCC website. It's a list available there. If you are so curious, I would urge you to take some time out, go to UNFCCC website. You can check the entire list of carbon credits given and share with me also how much did you find. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Just a very simple request, just a small request to all of you. In interest of everyone, see, when we expect that the nations should be caring for everyone, we should also be caring for everyone. What I mean to say is, if you have typed a question, wait for the SMEs, the experts, to answer that. Pasting your question 7, 8, 10 times doesn't make it a good question. And it is just, you are just doing a disservice to others because they are important questions you are hiding. So please, it is my humble request. Let's at least have this much of dignity. Let's not just keep pasting our question just because we want our question to be answered. Maybe your question is not that important, that is why it's not being answered. Just pasting it time and time again, and you know who you are. I don't want to take your name, but let's not paste it again and again, because you're hiding other people's questions and you're making the job of experts very difficult. So let's have that much dignity. Let's actually give everyone a chance. Okay, so whoever you are, I know I don't want to say your name, but I hope that you learn this. Okay, I'll take one more question. How do we know if any planet has atmosphere or not? If yes, how much? How much is difficult, but science has developed to such an extent that scientists now know which body has atmosphere, which body does not have atmosphere. So I don't think this is any debate now. It is a settled fact. Planets, which planets have atmosphere, which planets are too warm to not have an atmosphere because they have sucked up all their gases by themselves. But I can't say how much because there is no way to measure the atmosphere. How much, I can't tell you how many kgs or how many meters, but yes, the science has progressed so much that we know which heavenly bodies have the atmosphere. Perfect. Okay, one last question I'll take. Okay, perfect. One last question. India has not really had any soft landing expertise. Please understand this. See, when you talk about ISRO, ISRO is well known for sending satellites. Satellites don't have to land anywhere. The landing thing that we have was only on Chandrayaan. The Chandrayaan landing project, the soft landing, was not successful. Understand this, when we sent the Mars mission, the Mars mission was not a lander. What was the full form of the Mars mission? Mars orbiter mission. So our Mars mission was not a lander, it never landed, it is just orbiting Mars. So India has not given or taken any expertise in soft landing, etc. We are still far, far away from that. Perfect. Okay. Let's come back. The last topic that I want to discuss in detail, which is actually ongoing right now, is the COP27. The first question that I got when I opened this class, the first question, the very first topic, 10 of you asked me, sir, what is COP? What is COP? What is COP? I answered this earlier, but I'll answer this again. COP is Conference of Parties. Those who have just joined in, Conference of Parties. So right now in Egypt, UNFCCC actually is holding its COP27, means 27th meeting of all the member nations. Basically, that is how you can understand this. 27th meeting of all the member nations is being held by UNFCCC. UNFCCC is United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change. This is a premier meeting of the countries where they decide how can we control climate change. When you talk about the famous Paris Climate Change Summit, many of you would have heard the name at least, Paris Climate Change Summit. What was Paris Climate Change Summit? It was this meeting only held in Paris. So it was a meeting only held in Paris in 2015. It was the Paris Climate Change Summit. Similarly, it is happening in Egypt right now. Last year it happened in Glasgow. That was the COP26. So that is how the COPs are. Every year they are usually held, where the nations come together to actually give certain kind of assurances to the world. What are we going to do? Now, I want to focus specifically on India because that's where we are. What has India done? Let's try and understand this. Last year, this UNFCCC, last year COP26, was held in Glasgow, Scotland. So India last year made a very, very important announcement. What announcement did India make? Prime Minister was there in the COP26. He announced that India will reach net zero. India will reach net zero by 2070. India will reach net zero by 2070. Net zero means our net emissions will be zero. Net emissions of greenhouse gases will be zero. So whatever we are actually emitting, we will actually modify that, and we will try and balance that out by having so much generation of solar energy. We will have so much generation of energy through renewable means that we will be able to cancel that out. So that is called net zero, where our net zero emission or total emissions are zero now. Now, many nations around the world have actually given different aims when they want to reach net zero. India has said we will reach it by 2070, because right now we are still increasing year after year. This was an announcement India made last year. Different countries have made different announcements. For example, what China has said, China had earlier said we will reach by 2060. China said we will reach by 2060. India said 2070, and many nations have made different promises. Now, the point here is just making these promises randomly will not help anyone. So what was happening was, in the last COP, the one that was held in Glasgow, countries decided that when we meet next year, in the last COP, they decided whenever we meet next year, every country should submit their plan. How are they planning to achieve the net zero target? So all of them had to submit the plan. Not every country did that, because just like teachers give you homework, not all of you come back with the homework. The same is with the countries. Not all of them came with the homework, but India did. India is a good kid. So India came up with the homework, and India submitted its document of net zero plan. How are we planning to achieve this? That is what I want to discuss. Now, in this plan, India says that we will be achieving this by focusing on a lot of things. Focusing on, number one, green hydrogen. We'll discuss about that as well. India will focus on green hydrogen. Second, India will focus on renewable energy. Third, India will focus on public transportation rather than private transportation. These are some of the things that we will be focusing on, and obviously increasing forest cover. Giving a push to electric transportation. All these things are a part of the document. This is a long-term strategy that India has actually released. It's a long-term strategy to transition to low-emission country. This will be happening till 2070. Now, India, as I said, is one of the few nations that did release this kind of a plan. All the nations were supposed to release it, but only 57 have submitted so far, and India is one of those. India has said that we will be focusing on increasing our energy efficiency and giving a push to low carbon economy. Now, the interesting part is, if you look at the past years, let's say a decade or so, India has made amazing progress, especially in solar energy. If you look at international reports, you will see just 10 years back, solar energy used to be the costliest form of electricity. Why? Generating solar energy used to be very costly. The equipment used to be very costly. So nations did not really like it. But in the last 10 years, what has happened is the cost of generating solar energy has come down drastically. It has become one of the cheapest sources of electricity now. And in India, there has been a lot of progress made on that. So much so that in 2015, please understand this, in 2015, many countries submitted something called the NDC. In 2015, countries submitted NDC. What was NDC? NDC was Nationally Determined Contributions. Nationally Determined Contribution. So in 2015, every country actually submitted a list. What will we achieve in the coming years? For example, India submitted a list. How much electricity will be generated from renewable energy? How much electricity will be generated from other forms of electricity? How much forest cover will we increase? Every country submitted their list in 2015. What India has done last year, India in fact made their targets even bigger. The 2015 target that we had given to ourselves last year in Glasgow, the Prime Minister actually increased those targets, that we will achieve it even better. We will go even further. For example, in India, forest and tree covers actually absorb 15% of CO2 emissions in 2016. And we are on track to achieve our goals, the nationally determined contributions, which was India will have a forest cover that will be able to absorb 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon sequestration. This is what net zero is. So net zero is, if we produce X amount of greenhouse gases, then X amount of greenhouse gases should be absorbed by our forest only. If that is met, this will automatically become a net zero situation. The amount of greenhouse gases that you are emitting, all of them are neutralized because all of them are being absorbed back by the forest, and it is being generated and it is being refreshed into fresh oxygen. That is what India is actually aiming for. Now, as I said, the document that India has submitted says India will transition to low emission economy. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. Understand this. India has made many promises that we will reduce our emissions, we will increase energy from renewable sources. All of that is important. But what India has done interestingly is, in the same document, we have also written one thing. What? Understand this. In the same document, India has written that it will cost trillions of dollars. It will cost trillions of dollars that should come from developed nations. India has said that the same will cost trillions of dollars that have to come from developed nations. Now, what does it mean? It means that on one hand, India has promised everyone, yes, we will achieve these many things, we will switch to renewable energy, etc. But on the other hand, India has also told the world that it will cost a lot of money, and only if developed nations give that money to us, only and only if the developed nations contribute that money, only then we will be able to achieve that goal. Now try and understand, why is it being done? India on one hand has said that we will be able to achieve this, or we want to achieve this. On the other hand, we have ourselves put a condition that, but if you want us to achieve, developed nations should give us the money. So that tomorrow, if India is not able to achieve our own goals, we will say, oh, developed nation never gave us the money. How will we achieve our goals? As simple as that. So one hand, we have set the targets. On the other hand, we have said that we will only be able to do that if developed nations actually give us the money. Indian government has made a big list of our nationally determined contributions now. First list, focus on life. I don't know if you noticed or not, a few weeks back, Prime Minister Narendra Modi actually inaugurated this project in India. And UN Secretary General came to India specially to inaugurate this. What is this? The Prime Minister said, we have to focus on life, that is lifestyle for environment. Now, what exactly do we mean by this? Basically, what Prime Minister said is, if we want to fight against climate change, we cannot just run after companies, stop pollution, do this, do that. We also have to make changes in our lifestyle. Our day-to-day lifestyle has to change. For example, if you're traveling alone, don't go by your own transportation. Take a public transportation. If you are alone, you can actually compromise on a lot of things, which will actually be very helpful for the environment if all people come together. So lifestyle has to change. I'll give you an example. In India, that is not that prevalent. In US, there is a new trend in the last 1 year or so. What has happened is, there are many celebrities in US, celebrities as in singers, actors, wrestlers. So in US, it is very common that celebrities have their own private jet. Many of them have their own private jet. Now, what has happened is, in the past few months, it has been seen that the same celebrities which come on Twitter and say, please don't harm the environment, clean the environment, that same celebrity, even if they have to travel within their own city, they take their own private jet just for 20 minutes to go to within their city, land, have dinner with their friend, and then they come back home with their own private jet. And the same celebrity will then go on Twitter and lecture you, oh, you common people, you are doing too much pollution, very bad. Those same people are doing it. And there are so many articles written about it. Articles such as where, and this is an article, and I will not tell you name of the celebrities, you can Google search it, it's available everywhere. Articles where two celebrities, boyfriend and girlfriend, they're chatting, let's go on dinner, and the next question is, okay, we will take your jet or my jet. It's like they're talking about bikes. Same celebrity will tell you, no, 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 you should not use private transport, you should use a public transport. Same celebrity taking his private jet just for 15-20 minutes. So this kind of hypocrisy that you see, and I'm not taking names, but you can search online, it is available all online. So that also comes into the lifestyle which needs to change. You can't just go on and lecturing, you should not do this, you should not do this, when on the other hand you are yourself not even thinking about whether or not you actually have to take your private jet to go somewhere. But see, when you have the money, you don't really care about what people know, what people think of you. When people start criticizing you, you pay money to a social media agency to write some good articles about you, to post some good videos about you, and again you are back in the news. People will hate you, but they will go back on Instagram to see your photo only. So they know that people can't really be angry with them. So Prime Minister has said that we have to change lifestyle. He's not talking about you, don't worry, he's talking about the celebrities. Then we have to adopt a climate friendly, cleaner path. We have to reduce emissions of our GDP by 45% by 2030 as compared to 2005 level. We will achieve 50% of electric capacity from non-fossil fuel base. This is where India has been doing very, very well. Why? Mainly because of solar. It's mainly because of solar, the progress that we have made in solar. We are doing very well in this. India right now has some of the cheapest rates of solar generated electricity. Although solar panels are still being produced in China, China is still the world leader in solar panels, but we have been able to give a lot of push to solar energy specifically. Then we also aim to create carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2, meaning that enough forest cover where this much CO2 is absorbed. This is called carbon sink. Carbon sink means forest cover where forest plants can absorb carbon basically, so that they can take out these pollutants from the environment. To adapt to climate change by enhancing our investment, to make more investment in ecological reasons. Let's not have any kind of destruction in those regions. To mobilize and have more funds. See, Indian government will always talk about funds when they talk about climate change. This has always been a government strategy. Because at the end of the day, we have to tell the world, see, we are ready to do everything, but the developed nations are not giving us money. What can we do? So this will always be there, where India will always say, see, we want to do good, but you are not giving us money. What do we do? So developed nations have to give more money to developing nations. We have put this condition, even only if you want us to achieve net zero, you have to give us more money for that. To build capacity means skill development mainly. Skill development so that people can learn how to make solar panels, how to utilize these kind of things, so that we can be self-dependent. Now, one more thing, there is something called perform, achieve and trade scheme. Now, what is perform, achieve and trade scheme? This is very, very similar to the concept of carbon credits that we discussed. Very similar to carbon credits that we discussed. What happens in this is the government of India will give certain quota to industries, that you can have this much pollution, you can have this much pollution, you can have this much pollution. Now, when they save on their quota, these companies will get energy saving certificates. They will get energy saving certificates. Like if an industry was given 100 million tons of CO2, that this is what you can emit. If they only emit 80, then they have energy saving certificate worth 20 million tons, which they can then sell to other companies. This is called perform, achieve and trade. So you perform better, you reduce your emissions, you achieve it, you basically achieve your target to be below your level, and then whatever you have saved, you can trade, you can earn more money. These are done through energy saving certificates that were introduced in India in 2011. These are the sectors which are included in this: cement, aluminium, iron, steel, paper, fertilizer. All these kind of industries are included in this. When you say market mechanism, basically market based mechanism means it is sold and bought at market prices. Government doesn't tell the price. Like stocks, when you buy stocks, whatever best price you buy it from there. Simple. Like gold, you go to the market, whichever shop is giving you the cheapest, you go and buy it from there. Similarly is the case here. The companies will buy from each other wherever they get the cheapest. Now the last thing I want to discuss with you is green hydrogen, mainly because green hydrogen is a big part of the government of India's plans. See, government of India also knows in the long run, India's population is still increasing and we need a lot of energy, renewable energy specifically. One good option can be green hydrogen. So hydrogen is of different types. There is green hydrogen, there is gray hydrogen, blue hydrogen, etc. Depending upon how it is made. Green hydrogen basically can be a great source of energy. It is colorless, odorless, tasteless, and it is lightest, simplest, and the most abundant family of chemical elements that are found anywhere. So it is available in huge quantity around the entire universe. It actually makes, or it is considered as the fuel of the future. As I said, green hydrogen, gray hydrogen, it depends on how exactly is it being made. The color is determined by that. It is produced through electrolysis using renewable sources of energy such as solar, wind, and hydel. So that is how it is mainly made. India has been focusing on green hydrogen in the past few months, in the past few years, in fact. India has begun generation of green hydrogen, and our aim is to have non-fossil fuel capacity of 500 gigawatts by 2030. Recently, Indian government did set up a green hydrogen plant also, that was in Assam's Duliajan. So we are working towards that, hoping that India can be a world leader in green hydrogen specifically. As I said, there are other hydrogens as well. There is gray hydrogen, which is generated from fossil fuel like coal, etc. There is blue hydrogen, which is generated by burning fossil fuel to prevent carbon release in the process. So there are different types of hydrogens depending upon how exactly are you making it. Green hydrogen is used making electrolysis. Electrolysis means using electricity to break water. So using electricity to break water into hydrogen into oxygen, that is how you get hydrogen. That is called green hydrogen. This is green. This is turquoise hydrogen. Because I am a boy, I don't know the difference between blue and turquoise. Maybe some other boys know here, but I don't. So this is blue hydrogen, this is turquoise hydrogen, this is gray hydrogen, depending upon how is it exactly made, what are the sources. So green hydrogen is the best because it is made from renewable energy and it is the safest for the environment. This is the kind of question that you can expect from this. How can green hydrogen economy be an answer to India's climate troubles? Elaborate. Please do remember to read about this because green hydrogen is something which has been at the top of government's agenda for some time now. It's something that will remain in the news in the coming days also. Whenever you get any article about green hydrogen, do read about it. It is something very important for the examination. Now, these are the topics that I had for this webinar. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned a lot of new things. Let me take a few questions very quickly before we end this. There's a question different between reservoir and dam. Reservoir simply means anything that stores. Reservoir of water, reservoir of anything. Dams can be of different type. One is reservoir, one is other. There are different varieties of dams. One of them can be reservoir. Reservoir is a word that is used for any storage. I have a question then. Sustainable way of living based on traditions and values of conservation and moderation. In this sentence, what is moderation? Moderation means what Lord Buddha said. Nothing on the extreme. For example, nothing on the extreme means don't go on a private jet just to have dinner, and don't keep on walking and walking and walking because you will get tired. Be somewhere in the middle. Take a bike, take a car, go to dinner, as simple as that. So be in moderation in between. Don't go to the extremes, basically. Okay. Then I have a question, market-based mechanism. I already told you market-based mechanism in simple terms means when something is traded on the market, no fixed price, it depends on how much you can sell it for. Simple. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so these were the questions that were given to me. As you know, we will have these webinars every Tuesday, every Thursday. So I'll most probably meet you next week as well for the next webinar. If your question is not answered right now, it can be answered in the next webinar as well. Thank you so much for watching in. I hope all of you make the best use of the next 6 months before the prelims examinations if you are planning to write the 2023 paper. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye. Good night. Jai Hind.